My name's Chloe Garner. I'm the artistic director of Ledbury Poetry Festival, and it's a real delight to see so many of you here. It's wonderful, 148 people and going up, so absolutely fabulous. So the Poetry of the Lockdown project began as a series of commissions asking poets to respond to these times, extraordinary and challenging times that we've been living in. And then as I emailed the poems out that came in as part of the commissioning, the commissioned poems, I was getting so many replies from people, and people also sending me poems, their own lockdown poems. And that is what inspired the Poetry of the Lockdown online call, which has been on our website and has had over 300 poems submitted to that open call. It really has been it has been amazing seeing, you know, this is for me the first time in my lifetime that I've experienced something, this pandemic and the lockdown that has actually been happening all over the world. And I think poetry is really a really wonderful and incredible medium for responding to this kind of experience that we're all trying to make sense of and going through in some ways together, though of course it's so different for each person in so many different contexts. So I would encourage you to go to the website, read the poems that are on there. The call out is now closed, but you can still read the poems. And also thank you to all the poets who responded to the commissions. They have been really well received. So it's really a great pleasure to put together, it's been a great pleasure to put together this event and to hear some of those poems. And so the way we're going to do it is Hannah Green, who's a wonderful festival volunteer. We have lovely volunteers who help really, in fact, make the festival happen. The festival wouldn't happen without these volunteers. Worked with me on this project. So Hannah Green is going to introduce each poet individually, and then at the end we'll have a great round of applause for everyone. Now, Phoebe Stooks gave us the first poem as a commission and called No Touching, and she can't be here today, but I did hope to show the poem. She sent us a reading, so if David Hewitt is here, we might manage to do that as part of the event, but I'm not sure if that is going to be possible. In the meantime, I think therefore we'll begin with, I will hand over to Hannah so that we can get started and hear some of these poems. So thank you very much, Hannah.
Thank you, Chloe. Hi everyone. First of all, we've got Phoebe Power.
We go unmuted. Hi everyone. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me. My poem is called A Corona, and it's exploring the idea of the corona as its literal meaning, which is a crown. Chloe asked me to write a poem in March, and as you'll remember, March was when it really kind of the crisis really accelerated, and the idea and the image of the crown was in my mind because of the word corona. And I was thinking about the fact that even though all the nations of the world are quite isolated, we're becoming more isolated in another way, we actually became more linked together, and it felt as if there's a kind of encircling by this virus. Everything has sort of been encircled. And I also, because it was, at the time it was Lent, and it was coming up to Easter, I wanted to use the image of the crown of thorns somehow in my poem. So I'll give it a read. A Corona. We are in an open desert now, houseless, and carrying just the things we need. Made of dust, life enters us from water, earth, and microbe too, because we're borderless. Our bodies bare and woven by this across nations, grids, and laws, like leaves, a girdle, strong vines, maybe even a crown. Since Easter comes, yet a band of thorns, hard pressed in, though protective of the shrubs, soft colours, its labours. May your love be like a prickle, adding to itself, unadorned and joined in multiples.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Hannah. So my name's Sarala. Thank you very much, Ledbury, for commissioning this poem and inviting me to read here today. Thank you, Phoebe Power, as well, for that really powerful poem. It's interesting that my poem is also written in the we. I think probably my poem was also written very early on, so I think a couple of weeks into lockdown being announced in the UK specifically. And I think there was this urge to sort of try to reach for a connection in this time of sudden isolation. So yes, I will read my poem. It's called Lockdown, March 2020. Suddenly, we are all aliens. We've woken up foreigners on a planet we believed belonged to us, but today has been declared off limits. We can only visit this new hushed landscape through state-sanctioned daily walks. It's awkward, the new social distancing methods, crossing the road when we spot a person up ahead, indiscriminately now, suddenly everyone is a threat. Trying to explain this to our children, scolding them for running up to the postman or the neighbour, reminding them 2 meters, 2 meters, trying to keep the smile on our faces. We envy our children, sauntering cheerfully, so quick to adjust to playdates on Zoom, oblivious, of course, to the real situation. From our windows, we observe the carrion crow, whose call can be heard so clearly now in the new enforced silence, as it sits on a branch bejeweled with buds and unfurling green sprouts, this new life we cannot touch.
Thank you very much. I've just heard that we can now play the Phoebe Stooks video.
Hi, my name is Phoebe Stooks and I'll be reading a commission from Ledbury Festival. They've been asking women poets to respond to headlines, and the headline I chose was about how at that point they were searching for business-like ways for people to greet each other that wouldn't involve touching hands. And that made me think about what affection would look like if we could no longer touch. And the epigraph of this poem is from the article, and it says, "Science says shaking hands is disgusting." And that's from Nikki Milner, Director of Medical Education at Anglia Ruskin University. This poem is called No Touching. First we bumped elbows 1 second too long. Our jumper fabrics made static, it stung. Then we touched shoes, leaning back on the left foot and knocking with the right. Then 6 feet apart she waved to me and I waved back. I wrapped my arms around myself. She blushed. From her window she made a shadow puppet of a bunny rabbit. In my window I made a bat. We connected plastic cups with string that stretched for miles. She said hello, I said hello. She said hello, I said hello. I saw dolls of the police who kept us apart and burnt them in a bonfire on top of the hill. From her hill she hosed arcs of water. I made red flags the size of parachutes and waved them at her. She waved back in blue, then purple, then blue. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Next up we have Leslie Ingram.
Well, thank you, Hannah. This is rather a personal poem. I don't often write very personal poems, but I'm still locked in, locked up, locked down, and will be until according to the letter from the government, the 1st of August. I don't breathe very well. I'm on the list of shielders. And it's quite scary because if I catch it, I won't survive. Lockdown, oddly, has been quite enjoyable. But I'm lucky in that I have a lovely, caring, considerable chap to watch out for me and to help keep me safe. So this poem was written quite early on. Watching. I sleep now with the curtains open, like I did as a child, watching Orion on those breath-tight, sleep-lost nights, watching the belt, the sword, the body-sized shield advancing, pushing the sky past my window's frame, forever holding the scorpion at bay. Nights are now breath-tight and sleep-lost. The stars are missing. Only the moon blurs by. Age has become a blindfold. We are sleeping in separate rooms, but I can still feel your breath on the nape of my neck, your hand warm on my hip, your absence, my shield.
Thank you, Leslie. Next we have Heather Wasty.
Hi, thanks very much. That was lovely, Leslie. I enjoyed that.
Thank you.
My poem started when I was sitting in the lounge at home. I was thinking about hope. A poem's called Hope in Lockdown. My husband was making the dinner and I felt very lucky to have 4 walls to keep me safe, and they were a comfortable 4 walls, which I was scared to go beyond. Also, there's a hole in the wall at the back of our house, a small hole where some robins had made a nest, and we enjoyed watching them going in and out. I actually enjoyed lockdown and in many ways didn't want it to finish because of the quiet and the bird song. This poem is called Hope in Lockdown. There is hope tonight. There is steak, there are chips, there are peas tonight. There are sofas, carpets and doors tonight. There are walls and holes in walls where birds make their nests. Not the best kind of hope, but this hope. There is wine tonight and a screen to distract from the lack. And we hope tonight that the steak will be tender, the chips fat and crisp, the peas sweet and green, the sofas supportive, the wine soporific, the carpets expansive, the doors locked and bolted, the screen sugar-coated, the nests all deserted. For there is the hope, in the song, on the branch, on the lawn, on the fence, in the hatchling I saw in the eaves, too scared to move, as a magpie swooped and beat its black wings, where later I cried at spatters of red on the white window frame.
Thank you, Heather. Next we have AJ Hemmings.
Hello, I'm Jane Hemmings actually. Thank you for inviting me to come along and read. It's wonderful to be here among all these poets. Alan, my husband, is 94 and he's a lifelong player of piano blues. He's being well looked after in the care home, but during lockdown, he's been missing visits from his friends and family. His dementia makes it hard to understand. He asked me to write him a blues. Here it is. Blues for Alan. Well, I've got the lockdown blues, man, round and round in my head. Yeah, I've got the lockdown blues, babe, round and round my bed. Want to see my friends and family, but I've got to stay alone instead. You know those coronavirus blues, well, they're playing on my mind. Yeah, those coronavirus blues, well, they're playing with my mind. Want to reach out and touch you, but I know that wouldn't be kind. We're all doing our best here, trying with all our might. We're doing our best, yeah, we're trying with all our might to look after each other and check that everyone's all right. We might feel like frowning. We might feel like the world's all bad. Yeah, we might feel like sighing and think the world's gone mad. Being kind and gentle to each other will stop us all getting too sad. Got to take good care to tell our loved ones exactly how we feel. Got to take good care to let our loved ones know how we feel. Because staying away will prove our love is really real. We've got to keep on being patient till that virus is on the run. Yeah, we've got to keep on being patient till that virus is on the run. When it's over the horizon, then we'll really have some fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Next we have Mark Saunders.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for those blues. That was lovely. And greetings from a blustery Edinburgh. This is a piece I wrote a couple of months ago at a time at a stage in lockdown where I was beginning to lose track of time, really. It's a short piece. It's called Let's Call It a Day. I can't believe it's Friday, and the same goes for Thursday and the day before that, which was, what's its name? Let's call each day, day. Today's day, the spring weather holds, so out of isolation I step feeling bold. My neighbour outside his door stares as if we hadn't seen each other before. I wave across the hedge and call out, "Good day." I do believe it is what used to be called a Friday. Ha, those were the days, he replies with a smile and tips his hat as we go our separate ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next we have Simon Tyndale.
I'm here. Hello, can you hear me? I should have unmuted, sorry. Thanks, Mark. I love the poem. It's lovely to be here. Altruism, bravery, tolerance, and good-humoured mourning. This is the selfish isolator. Week 1. I bought all the bog roll in town. There's not quite enough to go around. Perhaps I should issue you all with one tissue to use when the shit's going down. Week 2. They cancelled my spring holiday. The football's postponed until May. The pubs are all shut. I've a pain in my butt, but the doctor says, please stay away. Week 3. Someone is murdering the Bangles. Now Angels is going through the mangle. Staying alive follows I will survive. I'd rather hear cats being strangled. Week 4. The neighbour's no good at homeschooling. It's only himself that he's fooling. Those ignorant brats won't learn English or maths, and bad language needs overruling. Week 5. Our leaders are out of their depth. Their vision lacks clarity and breadth. Is it worth jumping in when you're struggling to swim, or are you better off saving your breath? Week 6. You may be surprised at this loner, signed up to become a blood donor. A gallon of ale's been instilled in these veins. I do hope it chokes the corona. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Next we have Anne Worrell.
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me? I'm Anne. Have I unmuted?
Yes.
Oh, good. Right. Okay. I'm reading Night Walk. I was hospitalised with pneumonia in January. So when the coronavirus hit, I was kind of paranoid, really. And you only had to sort of clear your throat within 6 feet of me, and I was writing my will. It was all right during the day because I live with 6 grandchildren and their parents, but I couldn't ever sleep at night. And so my husband used to drag me outside into the garden to walk around it to get some air. And this poem really is about that experience and what it meant to me. We took a walk around the garden. Black night. You had a torch and held my arm. We might see hedgehogs, you said, sounding as young as when we married those 47 years ago. The air was full of drowsy scent. Apple blossom, we deduced. The trees are smothered in it. A dog barked once or twice in the distance, the only noise that disturbed our silence. You showed me the shrunken stream and where it had winter eroded the bank. Wild garlic and chives surrounded the tree with the blue tit box. You were sure they were nesting, and petals covered the grass like flakes of snow. The hedgehogs were hiding. Even your torch could not find where, but solar lanterns lit the greenhouse. You'd placed glass pieces inside the one you had mended to reflect an eerie green. And all the while, your hand, familiar, safe, moved me away from where the orchids were beginning to show so we wouldn't crush them. What a sight we made, me in my 2 short pyjamas and you with your worn trousers, old now. And yet I felt so young in wonder.
Thank you. Next we have J.L.M. Morton.
Hi everyone. Hi. Thanks for the invite, Chloe and Ledbury Poetry Festival gang. It's really nice and a really lovely surprise to be invited along today. My poem's called Lockdown Buzz Cut, and it was written like a lot of these poems in the really early days of lockdown. And it was sort of a time when nobody knew if they were ever going to get a haircut ever again. But it was also a time when families and partners were spending so much more time together than they usually do. And kind of some of those dynamics were thrown into pretty sharp relief, I'd say. So this is what that poem's about. Lockdown Buzz Cut. This is the time of kind-hearted dispensations, when kids hold scissors two-handed, garden shearing a father's hair, open mouthed in concentration, squealing at the mists of water spray. When time comes round for the game to end and mother takes the clippers, it's been weeks since they've touched. Her fingers furrow the pattern of his follicles, and he's a mole, flinching through old locks. She thinks she wants to press the whirl on his hairline where a cowlick used to be, until they connect, or he disappears. Entrusted with the mollusk washed up on the wold of his skull. She thinks she wants to stoop and taste the earth on his neck. She trims around the ears, grades the edges, and his shoulders slacken. Both of them gulls at the plough, their flight an act of faith. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliet. Next up, we have Elizabeth Sennett-Clough.
Thank you, Ledbury, for the commission. This poem was also written fairly early on. The title was a headline in several local and national newspapers in the English-speaking world, and the poem uses a lot of found text taken from Twitter. Stick together by staying apart. 1. 2 labradoodles charge at some girls playing in bushes in the local park. The sun is out, the park busier than ever. #selfish pricks. 2. Not everyone has an Xbox, a laptop, or a garden. You're not meant to be enjoying living instead of existing. #selfish pricks. 3. It wasn't the sunbathers in Brockwell Park who got us into this mess. Last month, the ministers were still talking about herd immunity. #selfish pricks. 4. Activities that confer COVID-19 immunity. Jogging in groups, attending a house party, barbecues, sunbathing, sex with Kyle Walker. #selfish prick. 5. Did you manage to stay in today? If you read this, fuck off home. #selfish prick.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Next, we have Kim Moore.
Hi. Am I unmuted? Yeah. Okay. I wrote this poem, I think, in April time, as a commission for Ledbury. My husband had suspected coronavirus at the beginning of March, so in the time when they weren't testing anyone, and I had to stay in the house for 2 weeks with a 9-month-old baby and just have neighbours and friends delivering bags of food, which was as fun as it sounds. He couldn't get out of bed at all, and I was having to sort the baby out and sort him out. So my experience of lockdown has been quite stressful. But I wrote this for it's called For My Daughter. I think she's at the perfect age for lockdown because she was 9 months when it started, so she's not really got any clue about what's going on other than that she's basically got our undivided attention 24 hours a day now because none of us have been at work. So For My Daughter. And later when she asks, I'll say some parts of it were beautiful, how in their brightness and sudden opening, the faces of the neighbours began to look like flowers. I'll tell her how we began to look back at photos of our younger selves with our arms around a stranger or leaning on the shoulders of friends, and saw that touch had always been a kind of holiness, a type of worship we were promised. I'll tell her that in some ways our days shrunk to nothing, being both as long as a year and as quick as the turning of a page. I'll tell her how she learned to crawl in those days, in those times when we could not leave, when bodies were carried from homes and were not counted, that she began to say her first word while death waited in the streets, that though I was afraid, I never saw fear in her eyes. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Next up, we have Suzannah Evans.
Hi, thanks. I saw on the list I was following Kim and I thought, that poem might make me have a little tear in my eye, which I do have, but I'm gonna carry on regardless. This poem is called Swifts, as in the birds. I feel like in lockdown the days have been sort of so repetitive that the seasons have kind of become main events almost. You know, the bluebells are out, the swifts are here, and it's also a poem about being you know, disconnected from the ones you love, not able to see them. My dad's a bird watcher, and so he raised me a bird watcher, so that's who I'm on the phone to in the poem. This is swifts. We are on the phone when I see them, the first of the year, little miracles above the stained bricks and scratchy trees of my neighbourhood. Not screeching yet, but wheeling, the light priming the edges of their knife blade wings. We might look fragile to them, so reliant as we are on our houses and our things, so tied by gravity to one hemisphere. You saw yours today too, and you are not so far away, but a distance I'm not allowed to travel. A blessing for those of us who notice things. I'll see you soon, you say. I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Suzannah. Next, we have Kathleen Carol.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, so my name is Kathleen, and thank you for the invitation. This poem was written as part of an exercise for an online group I joined with the Poetry Society. It was right at the beginning of the lockdown, and I live by myself. So I was, like many people, struggling to adjust to the restrictions, and I had quite a bit of resistance at the invitation to write a poem about it. And I think maybe that's because to write a poem about it meant I had to be present to a very uncomfortable level of uncertainty, comment on it, and at the same time manage the emotions that immediately evoked. But eventually I was so frustrated with my own resistance and lack of anything happening that I just surrendered. And then just like that, it came very quickly, but has benefited from a bit of editing. So here we go. April 5th, 2020. 1. Yesterday. I wrote a list. I made a routine. I woke up and set about to interrupt and disrupt it. I walked to a seat, sat with my back to the view, all aloof to a silence that would sing if a muffled ear was tuned. A friend wrote, "This inside flat screen life is shite." She was right. 2. Today. I peaked too soon, went out early and too fast. My body wound like clockwork, waddled in a wood where trees were felled, long lithe trunks in bits, roguish bark, some landed upright, alert totems, tribal strangers. People passed mostly at 2 meters. 3. Tomorrow. I'll try some of today and more of yesterday to make tomorrow a different day. I'll be better at this by then. This staying in and daren't go out. This shapeless shifting inside unpeopled house. I'll be all present tense. Stay in the now. Start close in. Stare down the how. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Next, we have Tess Biddington.
Hi, everybody. It's such an amazing thing to be chosen for many personal reasons, and I hope the poem might explain that. It's kind of ironic to me because my work involves rushing across the country, delivering training, and reminding people to be mindful and to do things that are precious to them, while for 20 years I've really neglected those things for me. So this poem was actually the first poem I've written or sent anywhere for probably 20 years. And so it's of great significance to me. And it feels like there's a kind of perfect storm of global events and personal issues that, I mean, what I've listened to in these amazing poems is how everybody has that unique perspective on the experience of lockdown. But actually, for me, lockdown has been somebody actually telling me, right, stop now, stop. And what a relief it's been. Okay, so my poem's called Defenceless. Choosing January, and for the third attempt to withdraw the medication that keeps the walls neutral and conforming for me, that sets the bar no lower but no higher, those weevils are returning to the woodwork, churning through old rot and making new. There is so much to consume, forces and events allied to fight off the choking chronic obstructions with a weapon of its own. Maps colour the insurrection's most brutal invasions. Satellites pick out the keloids, tiny scars in their rows on the red earth, where we are or will be buried. We are made enemies, deprived of touch, faces barely readable, we die alone, our last breath no release. And for days, sun pulls seedlings from their coats, wildflowers are named by chalk scrawls on the pavement, birds teach us their songs, the earth calms itself, and we wait and shuffle in masked queues, our skin warm, nothing else to do but wait and look around. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. Next we have Alison Brackenbury.
Hello. Hello, I'm Alison Brackenbury. I think that many of us during lockdown have discovered a small green kingdom close to our home. I have spent a lot of time on a footpath in a field just outside Cheltenham. Here I found the shells of oysters, a cheap food in Victorian England, and I found willow pattern, the china which shows the story of two lovers, one rich, one poor. After death, the lovers were reunited as birds. The poem is called Willow Pattern, a lockdown walk. Town's edge, a lane, a bridge, a field, marched by the battered stumps of maize, lit by hills broad as the moon. The cracks in April's clay will yield rich oyster shells to feed poor days, pipes, pig skulls. Best we find soon smashed pottery. And most is blue, slipped from quick hands, a child's, a maid's, to flags, were harsh words spoken. I brush a latticed rim, while you scoop one white scrap, whose two blue birds, smudged lovers, soar, unbroken. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Next we have Nicola Harrison.
There. Yeah. Okay. I'm Nicola Harrison, and I've been locked down alone because my family have spread so far around the country. And so I've really enjoyed lockdown, but I've also found the same suspended experience. And I started, my poem's called Ironing in Lockdown, because I started ironing finally this huge pile, and I suddenly realised that each thing I was ironing belonged to the life before lockdown, and I started thinking about where I was or what I was wearing at that time. So I got a real sense of the outside world through each garment as I ironed it, and a sense of loss of everything that we've taken for granted. And so this poem expresses a collective sense of women all experiencing the same lack of grooming at the same time. So ironing in lockdown. Soft Everest of laundry, avalanche of the unpressed, dispossessed dresses that once had occasions, hang like reproaches in hushed wardrobe air. The red halter neck, now hobbled by COVID, and fine woolen shawls, moth-doilied in drawers, like old horseback blankets cast aside, eclipsed by shorts and trainers. No glamour now. No skull and crossbone jewelled earrings from Butler and Wilson. Ooh, those hoops, outrageous bling. Now shops are shut, no sign of opening. Same old corona garb, washed every day, quick on at rising, no one to see creases in unfold shirts or dark roots in hair. Fuzz on legs, bikini lines, eyebrows thicken, breasts find benign slopes in braless idleness. Gels on toes wander from cuticles in reversed half moons, lurid in neon pink. They do not pass go. And hands are tough as hoofs from sanitizer, or wrung like grief in water to the happy birthday tune. Even so, I iron the red halter and the black frilled frock, suspend them from hangers, let them breathe, while I admire the person who was that person who wore that dress, and the bright lipstick, and the plucked brows, and the toenails scarlet. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. Next we have Paul Cage Hewitt.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for inviting me to read in this wonderful festival. The poem I'm going to read, I also wrote in the middle of the lockdown here in Barcelona. I'm from the UK, but I've spent 20 years now living here. And I think it was a day where I'd read in the newspaper about the political squabble to get masks in Turkey. The US were bribing officials to get the French masks, and all this kind of like sense of loss of control. And then I went to the supermarket in the evening, the local supermarket, with my full kind of outfit on, and everybody was avoiding each other because it was at the peak of the lockdown here. And I just wrote a verse that I think I needed to take myself out of the situation because it was a little bit intense. So this is called Everything. Okay. In the middle of this infinite black sea, amongst millions of blazing stars, hanging by a golden thread, you and I are here, and that is everything.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
On to Lucy French next.
Hi everyone, can you all hear me? Cool, right, okay. Yeah, so my name's Lucy and I'm a 17-year-old student from Ledbury. I wrote this poem during lockdown when I felt particularly guilty about my worry about coronavirus as a non-vulnerable person. I understand as the poem progresses that my worry might not be so much about getting the virus, but instead an illness that I've concocted myself and the effect it might have on me as we try and return back to normal. Okay. My fear of dying after quarantine and a selfish scramble for self-proclaimed immunity. I do not fear too much, for I am fortunate as ruined clovers in the summer sunshine. for my lungs are pink and bloodlessly rosy, no fidget of a frog clawing at my steel throat or twisted bated breath. Yet really, when I leave the insulated hygiene of my house, I am sure that I will suck a virus to the pits of my stomach and let it chew there, like a yellow dragon with the dark bones of an ill-fated heroine. Though I am sorry that I pray for my own desperate immunity when there are those that are not so favoured by the biological reckoning, when there are those who wait in paper doll beds in the deep cavern of a hospital ward to be told whether life favours the few or if death licks at their heels. So a second dragon, this one with gilt-speckled scales, gnaws at the other's worried tail until it remains nothing but a bloodied stump, nurses the wound until it forgets such culpability. Still, once we are let out from our kennels again, I shall cower with a chain to my neck. This illness is one of fiction, and I know it cannot be worse than the one reason by fact. But no amount of antibiotic intervention or forced ventilation, no quantity of crisp hand gel will heal such imagination. My wandering conscience has concocted a different virus that blossoms not into a pandemic, but a mental affliction, and one that I'm unlikely to see the end of. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Next, we've got Elaine Beckett.
Hello. I think I've unmuted myself. You okay? Can you see me okay? Okay. Well, my name's Elaine Beckett, and thank you so much to Ledbury for commissioning a poem for me for this event. I'm not going to say anything about it. It might not be to everyone's persuasion, depending on where you sit in the political hierarchy, but it's called Draft Email. I probably won't send this, but I just want to say that while you sat snug under a chandelier, inviting us to gaze past you into a salon fit for a king, the kind of king you imagined you would be until this devilish disease came along, we were stretching our elastic bands, measuring the distance from our noses to our chins. I wonder how you got to a place where making masks out of old t-shirts seemed an adequate instruction from the leader of a world-beating economy. And if you don't possess a t-shirt, try a vacuum bag instead. Your terrible pretense at making progress always starts with, let me be clear. No, let me be clear. Apparently, this Sunday, we were not at level 4 or at level 3, but transitioning from 4 to 3, exactly where you said we were 2 weeks ago when you told us that you could not lift the lockdown. Then you did. You are out of your depth, waiting for the sun to rise in jest, while lonely Saturn orbits the sky, and Monday is not Monday anymore, but Wednesday, a day that you told us would go very well, so long as we kept alert, tried pissing in the dirt, because public facilities were not yet due to reopen. And now that we can drive ourselves to death in some other place, where no one will care if we end up on the hard shoulder, while you get your hair cut again, in a vain attempt to look sober, before your next vacuous oration on the subject of why I'm not the fool you think I am, you seem even more like a sieve through which all reason drains. However hard you try to clench your fists, threaten to punch the living daylights out of anyone bold enough to bring you to account. That's it for now. Stay safe.
Thank you, Elaine. Next, we have Shivani Ramlakan.
Hello, everyone, and greetings from Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you so much to Ledbury for having me. I feel honored to be among all of you. My poem is a direct response, I think, and one I couldn't have predicted, to the idea that the coronavirus could take my resilient elders from me, my one surviving grandmother who has lived through so much, just thinking of the injustice of how her life might be cut short through a wildly indifferent disease, which thankfully hasn't ravaged our island yet, but certainly could, because we are all living through so much wild uncertainty. And I think this poem comes from a place that wants to resist the idea of losing someone so dear to me, while also knowing that so many people around the world have lost so many. It's called My Grandmother Plats My Hair at the End of the World. The uses of your hair are different now, my grandmother says, as her hands weave in the black mass. She balances a bone comb between the bounty of her gold teeth. You must use it to survive, not sweeten. From where we sit on the island's balcony, the mask of the world is cracking open. The river of sharp caimans quickens in its silence, widening between our house and all the other homecomings of dread. My grandmother smooths the central part in my scalp, runs red oil down the bared confessional of skin and curl. This is how the whole self becomes a leaf blade for enduring. Under the brown hands of the woman who once wrestled you screaming into the world of wet silences, into your mother's arms. When my heart knocks hard in its unmasked chamber, I lean into the weaving my grandmother's hands make. She combs in the terror of the small hours, plats the message I need to take through the mangrove, the chapel, the drive-through pharmacy of my fear. Use all parts of yourself to carry you. Grandmother, I am afraid to be distant from you. I hold my head upright, a crown of thick black wires wound with pink hibiscus. There is this pain of imagining our island without you, pulsing at the end of each braid, this love declaring you essential to me. I take all you've made of me into the ache of the world. Your name, the one sure thing surviving.
Thank you, Shivani. And now for our final poet, Naomi Shihab Nye.
Good day to everyone. Thank you all for your stunning poems. It's wonderful to be connected to you. I wish I could offer you any amount of our 100 daily degrees. If you're chilly, report from Texas. When the young ones, the strongest ones in the family, lay drenched and gasping with the terrible virus, and we, the older, weaker ones, stared out windows all day into night, counting birds that landed on feeders, feeding them everything we had, old cookies from the freezer, ancient crumbs discovered in a shiny sack, restlessly stirring soups, flipping small green onion omelets. when we could do nothing for the sick ones, but think about them, hound them with text messages, which often went unanswered for days. When the days were so long, I thought I might have had another birthday. When the count kept climbing, the child asked, "Where's Dada?" And we said, "He'll be well soon," but nobody knew. When the spring grass popped with pink flowers as if any hopeful year, and the streets sang a silent song, the sky held us all in our rooms, on our terraces, and no one knew what came next, which we still don't. I thought of Ledbury, cobbled streets where people pass, fearless, shop for fish and chips down that alley, waiting with others, shining cider spigots lined, billowing flowers from cottage doorways, the normal hours. And the listening, oh God, the listening. 80 events in a row, so rich, so spectacular, as if I had bought everything in the most luxurious shop my ears ever visited. And I wanted to be there again in another time, a time of poetry more than anywhere else on earth. In memory was the comfort.
Thank you very much, Naomi, and thank you for bringing us to Ledbury in our memories, to the festival as it actually is and hopefully will be next year. I would like to thank all the readers. I'm sure everybody's been looking at the comments on the right, and we've had some lovely responses, so do take time to read those if you haven't had a chance. But for me, this has been such a rich occasion and a chance to reflect and live with a bit the experiences that we've had over this period. And so thank you everybody for coming and for sharing their poems. These are just a small snapshot of the poems that are on our website. So do go and spend some time there and read the poems there as well. And the poems that we've heard, it's just been wonderful. So thank you very, very much, everybody. I'm now going to unmute you all so that we can all now give a wonderful round of applause to all our readers. So I'm unmuting everyone now. I hope everybody's unmuted.
Hey.
Oh,
it's wonderful. Little flashes of everything. Thank you.
Oh,
what a lovely hour.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Bravo. Thank you so much.
So do take time to fill in our survey if you get a chance. We'd really appreciate your responses. And if you enjoyed this event, or do feel free to share on Twitter or Facebook, any of the social platform you like to use. And hopefully we'll see you at some of the events that are happening after this one. Poetry Translation Jewel is next, so it'd be lovely to see people there when we'll be hearing two versions of a Spanish poem. But thanks again for such amazing readings, and thanks Hannah for hosting, and thanks for all our wonderful poets. And as I say, do visit the website and spend time at Lockdown Poems. It's fabulous. We've had a question about whether the poets will be published, and this is something that I'm really wanting to do. So thank you for asking that. I think it would be lovely to do an illustrated version, actually, of some of these poems. So that's a project hopefully that we might look into. So
that's fantastic. I've had a lovely hour with everyone.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. And aren't we lucky to be able to receive all this? We're so lucky. Yeah.
Very much so.
Bye.
Lovely event. Bye.